So, like, are we talking Doki Doki, Princess, or that one lady who kind of looks like Athena from Saint Seiya? Yeah, you see what happens when you guys kind of dilute the idea of the legendary cures. We opened this week with Nodoka visiting a doctor who told her that... Oh boy, that there's a big red flag if I've ever seen one. Yeah, for those who saw a previous video where I talked about my concerns regarding this series returning after the events of the pandemic, you'll know that my biggest one was whether or not they were going to abandon Nodoka's illness subplot. While I do understand current events making that a bit of a touchy subject, it's also been the source of some of the best writing and conflict in this show so far. And frankly, I think having a message about overcoming illness is something that needs to be told now more than ever. But judging by what Dr. Q-Ball here is saying, that might not be a thing anymore. Now, of course, this isn't absolute or anything, and it can even be a means of lowering Nodoka's guard against the Byogans, leading it to something really dramatic, like her relapsing her original condition. But, yeah, I don't see that flag being lowered anytime soon. Now, to be fair, this development did also play into the events of today's episode, so this might have been in the cards from the very beginning. As it turned out, the town of Sukuyaka was holding a little festival, mostly so that businesses could advertise their goods, in particular their food products. Speaking of food, in the Byogen Kingdom, Guaiwaru was continuing his mentor act with Bate Tomota by giving him his favorite snack, Yeah, I'll just say that certainly looks like something a giant rat would want to eat. Actually, on close inspection, that thing does kind of look like an ohagi. Oh boy, shouldn't give that to the character voiced by Keiichi. This didn't prevent the rodent from laying up on his brown nosing, though he did let a little of his inner Starscream show. Still, he agreed to stir up some trouble this week. Though before we get there, we got a nice bit of continuity from last week with Hinata trying to garner some praise from Nodoka by secretly giving her a pancake she made for her. Cute stuff that exhibits the developing relationships in this team. Chiyu soon joined them, and they checked out all of the goods at the festival, in particular some manju that I think Yuya Sasaki would enjoy. Apparently, the Sukuyaka manju were the signature food of the town, and had some supposed benefits. Yeah, that's what they all say, dude. But then you do a little research on how overly processed that junk is, and then you realize why you suddenly have diabetes. Regardless, they enjoyed their artificially colored sweets. Though, in spite of them being the size of her stomach, one wasn't enough for Rablin, and okay, I really want a gif of that. Anyway, they continue to enjoy the festivities, and what the hell is with Hinata here? Yeah, okay, I get that the focus is meant to be on the fact that Chiyu is blowing up bigger balloon than her teammates, but why did Hinata suddenly turn into a Peanuts character? Well, after a long break, I guess it's nice to be able to pull out this guy again. Now let's see here, I'll probably put that between Hime and Erika for now. Anyway, in the middle of all of this, Nodoka informed her friends about her recent clean bill of health. Hinata believed it was because of her becoming a precure, but Rablin said that the powers don't usually spread to their civilian forms. Chiyu, being the most business savvy of this team, naturally attributed to her family's hot spring, but no, they were going to get their answers a little later in the episode. For now, they need to help the manju stand whose steamers had broken down in the middle of the festival. Or, to be more precise, they helped out at the other confection shops who offered to let them use their steamers or pots or pans that could do the job. This week's writer was Mutsumi Ito, a veteran since Fresh, who tends to write more wholesome tales. She tends to write stories about the importance of family and/or communities, and how we should all do our part to support one another, much like the people of Sukuyaka, as even some random old lady provides some obvious exposition. It's honestly nice and positive stuff that I do like to see in Precure, though apparently it was also the thing that might be killing off Nodoka's illness subplot. Though again, I can't and really don't want to fault the message. Considering how our state's tourism is down due to the pandemic, I kind of wish everyone had this sort of attitude. Bate Tomota soon arrived and found a portable electric fan, and while that probably should have had another thunder elemental based off of last week's episode, instead had a wind elemental. I mean, I guess two elementals can't reside on the same item, but then why not just make this a plain old hand fan to keep things a little more consistent is all I'm saying. Anyway, we got our fight of the week, and yeah, in case you couldn't tell by now, this is, unfortunately, a Mitsuru Aoyama episode. You can usually tell by the stiff animation and overly round faces. And honestly, I knew this going in, and thus lowered my expectations for a good fight, and to the show's credit, they kind of surpassed them. I mean, it still wasn't anything great, but I also think that they were going for more of a comedic fight this week. The fact that they actually showed the Mega Byogen chasing the Cures after it had blown them away got a good chuckle out of me both times. That and this bit with the punk rat. Can we all just admit that Bate Tomota has been one of the best parts of all of the episodes he's been in so far? Eventually, thanks to some Pokemon logic, they managed to stun the flying type with an electric type attack and defeated it. While checking up on the wind elemental, it mentioned that this is the first time it had met a Precure in a while. Yeah, apparently it had previously met a Precure as far back as Japan's feudal era. Ramblin realized it was likely talking about the lady Teatinu had commissioned a whole statue to be built for her old partner. Jeez, nepotism much? But yeah, they're obviously foreshadowing the arrival of a certain someone for this show. Which again, I don't really want to talk about spoilers on this channel, so we'll hold back on talking about the obvious for now. But yeah, the only other thing worth to note was the fact that this legendary cure was born in the area. Anyway, in spite of them having just been attacked by a giant fan rotom, the festival resumed activities, in particular a yelling contest with the prize of 100 of those empty calorie-filled manju. The fairies convinced their partners to participate, and Nodoka ended up winning the grand prize. Yeah, remember when this girl had a hard time breathing after just a short sprint in the first episode? With that, the episode ended with our heroines devouring their prize. Because yeah, if you're going to overcome one ailment, you may as well replace it with some good old heart disease. This week's episode was fine, kind of wholesome, but yeah, nothing really good or bad to talk about, other than my usual complaints regarding a Mitsuru Aoyama animated episode. But yeah, I am still a little bit concerned about that red flag hanging above me, but again, we'll see how things pan out. I'll say I can and hope that I do end up retracting my concerns over this episode. Heck, there is some good setup here for things to go south in the story. The fact that they spent pretty much this whole episode hyping out how much of a great place Koyaka is could be building towards the whole town being overtaken by Byogen as a sudden and drastic turn. And if the town should fall, Nodoka might be affected mentally at the very least after developing such a strong connection with it over the course of this whole series so far. Yeah, I know saying all of that kinda makes me sound like I'm a sadist, but I just don't want this show to waste some good storytelling potential is all. Now, this episode by itself was nothing special as I said. Mostly just a wholesome tale of a town coming together to support one another, pretty par for the course for Ito, and nowhere near as amazing as the last episode she wrote for the show, but fine enough. The big takeaway of course was the foreshadowing of a new character, which does give this episode at least some significant value. That and some delightfully weird faces they managed to slip in spite of Aoyama's limited facial animations. Overall though, nothing much to write home about this one in the grand scheme of things. If you haven't seen it yet, I just posted the fourth and final part of my Happiness Charge review, making it, I think, the fastest series review I've ever done on this channel, because it usually takes me like a whole year to get out a whole series. If anything, this pandemic managed to force me to work out my reviewing muscles, and now I feel like I can turn out more longer reviews at a much more consistent pace, so yeah, you can kind of expect the Happiness Charge movie review to come out sooner rather than later. Though, before I do any filming, I should probably get a haircut now that things are starting to open up again. Still, look forward to it, and until then though, for now my friends, and if you'll excuse me, I need to cool down a little myself. And of course the batteries would be dead. Oh well, may as well just take a little inspiration from my thumbnail.